Hello, I hope everybody's doing well this Thursday. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for Friday. Me personally, it's going to be a busy weekend. One of my daughters is going to prom for the first time, and she's also got a band banquet. And then I'm gearing up. I'm actually going to next week meet with some of my fellow squadron mates from the Navy. I hadn't seen those guys in over 20 years, so I'm looking very much forward to that. So, trying to wrap up things this week. So, as you guys know, if you take a little bit of time off, you've got to work like heck on the front side of that, and then work like heck on the back side of that to get caught up for the time off. But fortunately, with the nature of my new business, I'm able to work remotely, so I'm hoping to get a little work done while I'm on the road as well. But I did want to pop on today and share a little bit with you. Hey Karen, thanks for being on. Look, I've got like these boxes of these self-help books, right? And hopefully, as I said before, with these chats, I can impart a little bit of learnings from all these self-help books that I've read throughout the years and compress them into bullet points, either one, to encourage you to read the book if you find it appealing at all, the topic matter, or to save you having to read it if I can give you the Cliff's Notes and maybe a few key takeaways if you don't have time or aren't really compelled to read the book. So there's one in particular that I dusted off and was thumbing back through that I absolutely love, and that was kind of the header that I put, which was, can you hear the voices? And so what I want to talk a little bit about is that little voice that each of us have inside the back of our head. And that voice talks to us for, lots of different reasons. There's a fantastic book that I recommend that every family read together called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. And if you don't know who that is, he's kind of the leading authority on awareness and safety in terms of social settings. He writes about if I don't know if you guys remember years back, I think it was in the early 90s in Waco, the guy that drove his car into the restaurant and got out and did a mass shooter type thing, and everybody just kind of froze, right? They didn't listen to that voice in their head. It was probably like, hey, get the heck out of here. Instead, they sat and watched as this thing happened, kind of froze up, and then the atrocity ensued, right? So what I want to try to hopefully compel each of us to do is to listen to that voice inside our head, or at least recognize when the voice is speaking to us, and then make a conscious choice to take the message in, process it, and then come up with an action, right? So that can take on a lot of different contexts, but you can either just blindly follow the voice, you can blindly disregard the voice, or what I'm suggesting again is take the message in, process what the voice is telling you, at least acknowledge it and go, hey, this is a moment my little voice is talking to me, and then do something thoughtful and planful with that. Okay, I think that's ideal. So with that, the book that I'm referencing is a book called The Search Inside Yourself. And this is a real easy read. It's about 250 pages, which isn't necessarily a short book, but it's also one that it's pretty light reading. It's entertaining as you read it and educational. But it's written, and I'm probably going to destroy the pronunciation of this gentleman's name, so I'm going to hold it up. It's Chade Ming Tan. And what this person is he's the meet and greet person at Google, evidently, or was. I don't know if he still is, but basically what this book is the culture that Google it tries to instill in their company, and so really I'm not here to talk to you about Google's culture, but I will say that it's working for them. Evidently, this is obviously a world-class company with world-class results, a world-class product. And again, it starts and stops with the talent that they attract and retain. And so part of their profiling in the I guess the talent that they're trying to keep at Google very much centers around people that do have emotional intelligence and have a command intellectually of their behaviors, right? So a lot of this is behavioral based psychology that this stuff stems from. Hey Jesse, good to see you, man. Thanks for being on. So with that, just not by coincidence, there's a foreword by a guy named Daniel Goleman, who I'm a huge fan of. And so Daniel Goleman wrote the first book I read by him was called Emotional Intelligence. And again, I talked about that in a past post. Those of you that didn't catch it, what they're talking about is there's different types of intelligence, right? But emotional intelligence, when you think about the way the brain works, the brain gives you impulses, fight, flight, your amygdala in your brain kind of tells you how to do that. So again, that's really kind of that little voice that tells you fight or flight, right? That's your amygdala at work. And amygdala, I learned there's a Greek word that amygdala, I think the translation is almond, because that gland in your brain is an almond-shaped organ, right? So anyway, your amygdala is that little voice inside your head that's kind of telling you how to react to situations. And there's some people that completely ignore it. They follow their impulses and they just react, okay? There's other people that step back and listen to that voice and they process and really embrace it and say, what's the voice telling me? All right, let me stop, let me think, let me analyze, and be a bit more planful in how I react. Those people tend to be much higher in their emotional intelligence, right? So that's kind of what sets human beings apart, spirituality aside, with what we view to be a more intelligent creature, right? When we talk about dolphins being, equally intelligent to human beings in a lot of ways, that's kind of what we're talking about, is they also have some ability to process in that way, okay? So as we think about that in the workplace, what does that look like? And so again, a couple of 10-minute chats ago, I think it was about a week ago, I did a post by you guys remember the what's the word I'm looking for here? Not the algorithm, the equation. Sorry, the equation of E plus R equals O, and that is the event plus the reaction equals the outcome. And what we talked about there was the event is the event that's going to happen, but however we choose to react to it is the key to what the outcome's going to be, right? So if somebody comes up and threatens you and you sit there and your choice is to not do anything, then the outcome may be a bit more not in your favor, right? If you sit there. Now, if somebody comes up and wants to attack you and your reaction is to either calmly talk your way out of it or to turn tail and get the hell out of a dodge or to reach out for help, then that may impact what the outcome is, right? So that's what we're talking about. So, Daniel Goleman is the kind of the leading authority on emotional intelligence, which I suspect why that he was referenced in the foreword on the Search Inside Yourself. But, he's also written, and I referenced this book a while back, Primal Leadership, also an excellent book by Daniel Goleman, talking about what this looks like. So to give a human example of, we're kind of a product of the stories that we tell ourselves oftentimes, and that can influence that voice inside our head as to how we react. So in the foreword of this book, Search Inside Yourself, it talks a little bit, gives an example of a toddler. And this toddler, before it learns to walk, it learns to kind of scoot around. And before it learns to crawl forward, it might kind of scoot around backwards. And it learns that the harder that it pushes and scoots, the more quickly it can travel. Fernando, Jeff, good to see you guys. Thanks for popping in. So anyway, then it gives the example the baby kind of scoots backwards and gets lodged under a coffee table. But the story it tells itself is, hey, pushing hard backwards is kind of what's gotten me around up to this point. So the baby pushes harder, further lodging itself under the table. Well, clearly that's not working, right? It's actually worsening the problem. So as we think about how we react, we also need to educate and condition ourselves to be thoughtful about what that reaction is. How do we now kind of change what's worked for us before that may not work for us in future situations? I am curious, down in the comments section here, if there's anybody that has read or has even heard of a book called Who Moved My Cheese? And I apologize, that'd be yet another book I'd love to hold up, but I still have a lot of my books that are in boxes that I'm slowly unpacking and going back through. It's almost like Christmas again. I haven't seen some of them in a while. But that book is an extraordinarily easy read, and I'll give you the cliff notes on it. What it talks about is, it gives the example of a couple of mice, and these mice are in this maze, and that's kind of where they live. And they're on one end of this maze, and there's a huge chunk of cheese, and they're kind of living and thriving off of feeding off of this huge chunk of cheese. Well, one of the mice was like, hey, we're starting to run out of cheese, you know, and this cheese is about half gone, and as I do the math and I'm looking at all the mice feeding on it, we better do something or we're all going to starve to death, right? And the other mice are like, yeah, whatever, man, we're just going to keep eating the cheese, that's what we do. So a couple of the mice, they decided to make the journey and head out of the maze to look for more cheese. The others chose not to, and they stayed, and eventually all the cheese was eaten. They had no cheese left to feed themselves and had nothing left to, you know, exist on. So without going into the whole remainder of that story, I mean, you get the idea that these several mice, they adapted. Okay, so again, if we borrow that ERO equation that I was referencing, the event was running out of cheese. The reaction was two very different reactions. One set of mice chose to go explore to find new cheese. The others chose to do nothing and just continue doing what they were doing, much like the baby continuing to scoot under the table because that's what they'd always done. And the outcomes potentially were very different. I don't know whether those mice starved to death or whether they finally turned and decided to head off to find the other mice, whether they went on their own exploration or whatever the case was. And we don't really know what happened to the other mice. I think they ended up finding their own cheese, right? But the point is that we as human beings have that unique quality and ability in our, you know, intellect to surmise the event, understand how we react or don't react, and then kind of anticipate what that looks like, and then either do nothing, and that's a choice, or to take a calculated risk, and that's a choice too. But understanding that we own that outcome, and all too often, you know, you might have these mice sitting around going, well, of course we starved to death. It's that darn cheese's fault. You know, the cheese, there wasn't enough, or hey, nobody brought us more cheese. Where the other mice were like, hey, we're kind of taking matters in our own hand. We're going to control our own destiny. And we're going to go make things happen for ourselves. Hey, Don, thanks for being on, man. Hey, guys, do me a favor, too, if you would. Down in the comment section, type what city and state that you've joined us from. I appreciate that. So anyway, why am I saying all this? Well, you know, as it applies to me, you know, I think I've shared with you guys before, I got to a point in my career where I kind of moved up the chain and was very blessed with some opportunities that I had, but I came, you know, up against choices where once my job went away, I was like, well, I can either pick up my family and move again, or I can stay put and be unemployed and try to live off the government, you know, and see how long that lasts, and then maybe one day I'll be living in a van down by the river, or I could reinvent myself and embark on a whole new career, all right? And I chose the latter. So, was that scary? Absolutely, it's scary. It's new, it's different. I'm having fun with it, and I'm glad that I did, right? So I'm thankful that I didn't just listen to the voice, because what the voice told me would be just pick up everything and then move to where the next job is, right? So I don't know what this holds for me, but I know that I need to continue to listen to the voice on this journey, but then I need to continue to also step back and evaluate what it's telling me, I need to think about the intangibles and the tangibles that are within my scope of influence and control. And I need to try to make the smartest choices for myself and for my family, right? So I don't know what type of journey each of you are on. I don't know if you're the people that show up to work every day and you're like, man, I hate my job. I'm miserable, but it pays the bills, right? So that's my cheese. So I'm going to sit there and eat on that cheese until there's nothing left, or until I'm just so miserable that I can't take it anymore, right? So I'm not suggesting that you just milly-nilly do something different or responsible, but I am saying that if your voice is telling you, hey, I'm unhappy, guys, you can't put a price on happiness, right? And again, if you're just embarking on your career fresh out of college or high school or whatever your situation is, well, that's kind of a forced phenomenon, right? Society says you're in school, boom, you're not, go make a living. There's no debating that. You're being thrust into that crossroads in your life. But once you're in your career, I think it's really easy to get stuck in a silo, or to have some plan or vision that you had when you were 18, that if you were to step back when you're 30 and look at it again, you might assess it a little bit differently, or that voice might be telling you to try something new or different. It might tell you, hey, maybe this ultimate goal is still the ultimate goal, but there's maybe some cross training or lateral development that you could use to help you get there in a better way, rather than just kind of staying down a straight path. Shawnee, Laurent, thank you guys for being on. So what's the takeaway here, folks? Again, the takeaway is multiple books, multiple theories talk about it in the behavioral sciences and physiological sciences, that we've got this thing that we call our instincts, i.e. the little voice in your head that tells you a story. And that voice is fed through our experiences. And again, the less emotional intelligence we choose to employ doesn't mean it's not there. I'm not saying people that don't listen to it aren't emotionally intelligent. But I'm saying it's a tool that if you never pull it out of the toolbox and use, then you might as well not have it at all, right? So listen to the voice, step back, absorb and kind of digest what it's telling you, and then really weigh your options, right? Whether you use a SWOT analysis. I don't know if you guys know what a SWOT analysis is, but it's kind of a pros and a cons list. I don't know if you guys have ever had a really tough decision. Somebody said, well, sit down and write it out on paper and put what all the pros are and put what all the cons are, and then maybe you can visually then look and it'll tell you maybe that you've already kind of got your mind made up and compel you into action a certain way. Raul, good to see you, man. Thanks for being on. So a SWOT analysis is really similar to that pros and cons list, but it's more of a quadrant, right? And it tells you what would the strengths be of this decision, or what would the upside be? What would the weaknesses of this decision be, or what would the downside be? What are the opportunities that decision would present? And what are the threats? What would be the things that might get in your way or cause, what obstacles would get in the way of your success, right? So, again, the grand takeaway here, gang, is don't just kind of blindly go through life. You got one shot to live it, right? So really take some time, be introspective about what you want. Have you fallen into a rut where life is managing you rather than you managing your lifestyle? And then step back, think about what that looks like, consider your options, and then take what that voice is telling you and be more thoughtful in how you react. Again, the event plus how you react truly dictates what the outcome is, right? So that's really all I have. I want to keep it short today. As always, I really appreciate everybody being on. If you got any value out of this, then do me a favor, type value down in the comments section. As always, if you've got any questions on these books or on any of the tools, because a SWOT analysis is one, I've got several tools that can help with this. And guys, it doesn't need to even necessarily be a personal decision. It could be a work-related decision. It could be a team decision. There's ways to facilitate how teams can work through these kind of changes together, or companies, right? So I've got some tools that I've leveraged in my time being an executive coach that maybe I'd be more than happy to share with you for free. So just don't hesitate to reach out with me. Even if you just want to talk through something over the phone, run your idea by me. I can throw, whatever 2 cents that I might have or any wisdom that I might have to contribute. I'm happy to do that. Jeff Weeks, thanks for being on, man. Shawnee, good to see you. So anyway, that's all I had. I appreciate, as always, everybody being on. Getting real close to having my website up and running at therealseanparker.com. That's taken a little bit longer than I'd hoped. As it turns out, I'm not an IT guy. I feel pretty good about the content, but I've got a guy coming over today, my brother-in-law, to help me with putting the darn site to get it up and functional. So anyway, I've learned a lot of lessons around that too. So if you're working on a blog and you'd like to kind of understand where I've tripped and skinned my knees in that process, hopefully I can tell you some stuff on that as well. Kelly, hey, thank you for being on. Anyway, that's all I have. You guys have a happy rest of your Thursday. I hope you've got a great Friday as well. Tomorrow we should be back on with a little fireside chat. And I hope to see you guys on there. Take care and have a great rest of your day.